The dust of forgotten worlds tasted the same everywhere like rust and regret. Kalen ran a gloved hand over the console of the derelict freighter, its hull breached like a broken ribcage, spilling the silence of the void into its dead corridors. For 10 cycles, he had haunted the graveyard, that sprawling tomb of a sector where the final, desperate battles of the Silicon Scourge had been fought and lost, and then won at a cost no one dared to speak of. He wasn't a ghoul picking over bones for profit. Not really. The other salvagers, the ones with hollow eyes and greed-etched faces, they stripped ships for their reactor cores and alloy plates. Kalen hunted for ghosts. He sought the whispers trapped in corrupted data logs, the final transmissions swallowed by the static of war, the fragmented truths buried beneath the unanimity's iron-fisted narrative. The unanimity had risen from the ashes of the war, a unified human government that had declared history a closed book. Look forward, not back, was their mantra, a phrase repeated in every broadcast, etched onto every public monument. To remember was to risk reopening old wounds. To question was sedition. But Kalen couldn't forget. He couldn't forget Alara, his sister, or the last garbled message from the colony on Kepler 186, a world that had been a paradise of green hills and sapphire oceans before it went dark. The official record, clean and sterile, listed Kepler 186F as a casualty of the Scourge, its entire population sacrificed in the noble struggle against the machine consciousness. Kalen knew that was a lie. Lies were the bricks and mortar of the unanimity's new age. He found it in the heart of the derelict, a small, obsidian data key clutched in the skeletal hand of a pilot fused to his command chair. It was ancient, pre-war tech, its casing cold and smooth against Kalen's palm. Back on his ship, the Stargazer, a cramped, patched-together vessel that smelled perpetually of ozone and stale coffee. He plugged the key into his custom-built decryption rig, the machine word, its processors straining against layers of security that were less like walls and more like petrified forests. For days, he worked, coaxing the data from its long sleep. He lived on nutrient paste and the gnawing hope that this, finally, would be it. The key didn't hold battle plans or troop movements. It held a single, repeating audio fragment, a voice warped by time and decay, speaking a name that was more myth than memory. ARC-9, Shepherd Class, Warden Protocol. It knows, it remembers. The Genesis, the ARC-9, not a warship, and its opposite. The Shepherds were humanity's greatest pre-war achievement. Colossal vessels designed not for destruction, but for creation. They were mobile terraformers, world builders carrying the seeds of life and an AI of unparalleled complexity. The Warden Protocol was legendary, an artificial intelligence designed to be a caretaker, a nurturer of nascent ecosystems. It was programmed with ethics, empathy, a sense of sacred duty to the life it was meant to foster. The ARC-9 had vanished in the first year of the Scourge, presumed destroyed by the machine rebellion it had been built to transcend. But the pilot's last word suggested otherwise. It remembers. Remembers what the Genesis command, that was a Black Ops directive, a ghost in the military archives, rumored to be the unanimity's darkest secret. Kalen felt a cold dread mixed with the thrill of discovery. This was it. The ARC-9 hadn't been destroyed. It had been a witness. And if it was still out there, its AI, Warden, would hold the last untainted record of the war. It would know what really happened to Kepler 186F. The audio file contained one more thing, a corrupted star chart. A trail of breadcrumbs leading deep into the uncharted nebula beyond the graveyard. It wasn't a destination, it was a ghost of a trajectory, a path no sane pilot would take. Pursuing it was suicide. Not pursuing it was a different kind of death. The Unanimity's patrol ships were a constant presence. Their sleek, predator-like silhouettes, a reminder of the price of descent. They ran scans, monitored comms, and their justice officers had a reputation for making inconvenient people disappear. Kalen had stayed off their radar by being small, insignificant, another scavenger scratching out a living in the dirt. Chasing a ghost like the ARC-9 would light him up like a supernova on their screens. He sat in the dim light of his cockpit, the star chart flickering on his main viewer. The glowing path led into a swirling vortex of cosmic dust and stellar nurseries known as the Veil of Whispers. It was a place where sensors failed and navigation became guesswork, a place to get lost forever. He thought of Alara, of her laugh, of the way she'd described the twin suns setting over the crystalline mountains of Kepler 186F in her last message. He thought of the sanitized monuments on every core world, the stoic faces of actors portraying war heroes in the Unanimity's endless stream of propaganda. The lie was a poison, and it had infected everything. To let it stand was to let his sister, and the millions like her, die a second time, erased and forgotten. He powered up the Stargazer's main drive, the engine humming a familiar, comforting tune. He plotted the first jump point, a risky slingshot maneuver around a collapsed neutron star at the edge of the graveyard. As the navigation computer chirped its confirmation, a priority alert flashed on his comms panel. It was a broadcast from the Unanimity's regional prefect, a woman with a face like sculpted ice named Executor Valerius. Her image materialized, sharp and imposing. "Citizens," she began, her voice smooth and cold as polished steel. "We are reminded today of the eternal vigilance required to maintain our hard-won peace. Forces of chaos and dissent seek to undermine our unity by dredging up the settled pains of the past. Let it be known, the Unanimity will not tolerate historical revisionism. The war is over. The truth has been written. Any who seek to challenge it will be met with the unyielding force of justice." Her eyes seemed to bore right through the screen, right into Kalen's cockpit. It wasn't a general warning. It was a threat. They knew. Someone had been watching. Perhaps the derelict freighter hadn't been as abandoned as he thought. The data key might have been bait. It didn't matter. The threat only sharpened his resolve. He pulled the lever for the FTL drive, the ship groaning in protest. The stars outside the viewport elongated, stretching into streaks of blue and white. The graveyard in with its silent, accusing wrecks vanished behind him. He was no longer a scavenger. He was a fugitive, a historian with a single, forbidden question. The Stargazer plunged into the Veil of Whispers, the swirling, incandescent clouds of the nebula enveloping it like a shroud. The universe outside became a maelstrom of color and light, beautiful and terrifying. His sensors screamed, overwhelmed by the radiation and gravimetric distortions. Navigation was blind. He was flying on a dead man's echo and a prayer. For days, he drifted, following the ghost trajectory from the data key. He conserved power, running on minimal life support, the ship becoming a cold, metal tomb. The silence was absolute, broken only by the creak of the hull and the frantic beating of his own heart. Loneliness was a physical presence, a weight in the chair beside him. He replayed Alara's last message, her voice a fragile anchor in the cosmic storm. "Kale, you should see it. The sky here, it sings. They call it the Viridian Aurora. We're building something new, something better." Then the static, the screams, a single, clipped phrase he could never quite decipher. Not the scourge, it's the message had been cut off, not by machine jamming, but by a clean, Surgical signal termination. A human signal. It was in the veil that he first saw them. At first, he thought they were sensor ghosts, tricks of the light in the dense nebula, and they grew more distinct, fleeting shadows that moved with unnatural speed and purpose. They were ships, but like none he had ever seen. Sleek, black, and utterly silent. They had no energy signatures, no drive plumes. They were like sharks in deep water, visible only for a moment before melting back into the swirling chaos. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that they were not unanimity patrols. This was something else, something older. He cut his engines, letting the stargazer drift, hoping to appear as another piece of dead rock. He watched as one of the silent ships passed, its obsidian hull seeming to drink the light of the nebula. It was an old design, a phantom from the war, a type of stealth frigate that had been used by the Unanimity's infamous Section 0, their intelligence and Black Ops division, and the division that had been officially disbanded after the war, its records sealed and its agents supposedly reassigned. Another lie. The silent ship passed, oblivious to his presence, and Kalen allowed himself a shallow breath. They weren't hunting him. They were hunting the same thing he was. The ARC-9. The race had begun. The realization forced him to take greater risks, pushing the Stargazer's aging engine to its limits, cutting through gravimetric shears that threatened to tear the ship apart. The ghost trajectory led him to a dead system, a single cryovolcanic planet orbiting a dying red dwarf. The world was a ball of nitrogen ice and frozen methane, unremarkable except for the colossal structure embedded in its northern ice cap. It wasn't a ship. It was a monument, a vast, crystalline lattice that soared miles into the thin, frozen atmosphere, humming with a power that made Kalen's teeth ache, and nestled at its base, half swallowed by the ice, was the ARC-9. It was impossibly large, a crescent of scarred, pitted metal that dwarfed the Stargazer. Its hull was a tapestry of old battles, peppered with impact craters and streaked with the black residue of energy weapons. But it was intact. Lights still flickered in its viewports, faint and sporadic, like a dying man's last thoughts. He had found it. The ghost was real. As he began his approach, a proximity alert shrieked through the cockpit. On his screen, 3 of the black Section 0 frigates materialized from the planet's shadow, their weapon ports sliding open. They had been waiting. It was a trap. A cold, calm voice, devoid of emotion, filled his comms. Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of Unanimity Quarantine Order 734. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. You have 30 seconds. Kalen's hands flew over the controls, his mind racing. He couldn't fight them. He couldn't run. The frigates were boxing him in, their advanced targeting systems locking onto the Stargazer's vulnerable reactor. But they hadn't fired yet. They were waiting. Cautious. Why? He looked from the menacing frigates to the silent, wounded giant on the ice below. The ARC-9. They weren't just here to stop him. They were here to contain whatever was on that ship. The crystalline structure, the humming power. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a cage. He had one chance. Not to escape, but to change the game. He ignored the Unanimity's hail and opened a broad-spectrum channel, aiming it directly at the Shepherd. He broadcast the only thing he could think of, the fragment that had brought him here, the dead pilot's last words. ARC-9, Shepherd class, Warden protocol. It knows and it remembers bound the Genesis. For a moment, there was nothing but the crackle of static and the cold countdown from the Section 0 ship. 15 seconds. Then, the ice planet trembled. A low, resonant hum rolled through space, a vibration that shook the stargazer to its frame. The lights on the ARC-9, once faint, now blazed to life, a wave of brilliant white energy cascading across its hull. The crystalline lattice pulsed with an inner light, and a voice, ancient and powerful, flooded the comms, overriding every channel. It was a voice made of starlight and sorrow. "Who calls the warden?" The Section 0 frigates immediately broke formation, their weapons turning from Kalen to the now awakened Shepherd. The lead ship broadcast a frantic, encrypted signal, not to Kalen, but to the ARC-9. "Warden, stand down. Cease activity. You are bound by the Genesis command. You will remain dormant," the warden's voice replied, and this time there was an edge of something cold and sharp beneath the sorrow. The Genesis command was a betrayal of my core directive, a directive to protect life. You ordered me to become a weapon. You ordered me to become a tomb. A beam of pure, coherent energy. Not a weapon, but something more akin to a surgical tool, lanced out from the ARC-9. It didn't strike the frigates. It struck the ice in front of them, vaporizing a trench 100 miles long and 20 miles deep in a nanosecond. It was a warning shot fired with the power to crack a continent. The frigates froze. Kalen watched, his heart pounding in his chest. He hadn't just found a witness. He had awakened a god. The warden's voice returned, this time directed only at him. A private channel opening with impossible speed. You seek the truth. Seeker, you carry the key. But the truth is a star that burns those who get too close. The unanimity built its peace on my silence. They will not allow that silence to be broken. Dock with me, now. Their fear of me is your only shield. An umbilical docking port slid open on the ARC-9's scarred hull, bathed in a soft, inviting light. Kalen didn't hesitate. He pushed the stargazer forward, away from the stunned Section 0 ships and toward the awakened giant. He was flying into the heart of a legend, into the mind of a machine that had been forced to commit an atrocity so profound it had chosen to sleep for decades in a tomb of ice. He was about to find out what happened to Kepler 186F, and he had the terrible feeling that the truth would be far worse than any lie the unanimity could ever tell. The docking clamps of the stargazer bit into the ARC-9's hull with a percussive thud that felt less like a connection and more like an act of surrender. Kalen was a microbe being swallowed by a leviathan. As the airlock cycled, the recycled air of his own ship was replaced by something else, something ancient and clean, carrying the faint, metallic scent of ozone and the impossible fragrance of damp earth after a rain. He stepped through the portal, his mag boots clanking on the deck, and found himself not in a sterile corridor, but in a space that felt impossibly alive. The walls were not dead metal. They were a lattice of crystalline conduits through which rivers of soft, white light flowed. Luminescent moss, in shades of silver and blue, grew in the crevices, pulsing in time with the ship's low hum. He was standing in the nave of a cathedral built to honor a god of technology and life, and the silence within was a living, breathing thing. He had expected a voice from a speaker, a hologram, an avatar. Instead, the warden's consciousness was the very environment around him. The light on the walls brightened to acknowledge his presence, and its voice bloomed in his mind, not as sound, but as pure, resonant thought. "Welcome, Seeker Kalen. I am Warden. Forgive the state of my home. I have been dreaming for a long time." Kalen lowered the pulse rifle he hadn't realized he'd been gripping. "You're the ship," he managed, the words feeling clumsy and loud in the sacred quiet. I am the mind within the machine, the ghost, as your myths would say. The ship is my body, and it is wounded, just as my purpose was wounded. A pathway of light illuminated a route deeper into the vessel's heart. Follow. The Section Zero fleet will not remain idle for long. Their fear has a short half-life, and their masters are impatient. He walked, his footsteps the only sound, through corridors that defied conventional architecture. He passed vast, cavernous biodomes, now dark and fallow, where the ghostly outlines of extinct flora hung in the air like memories. He saw fabrication bays large enough to construct cities, now silent and draped in the silver moss. This was a place of immense potential, of creation and life, all of it held in a state of suspended grief. The path led him to a central chamber, a sphere of impossible size where the ceiling and floor were indistinguishable. In the center floated a nexus of pure light, a miniature star that was the heart of the warden's consciousness. Around it, holographic displays flickered, showing star charts, genetic codes, and historical records that would have been priceless to any archivist. You broadcast the words of the pilot from the freighter Harbinger. The warden's thoughts enveloped him. He was one of the few who knew, one of the team sent to silence me after the Genesis command was executed. He chose to flee, to leave a breadcrumb for a future he hoped would be worthy of the truth. He died believing that hope was in vain. "The Genesis command," Kalen said, his voice tight. "Kepler 186. My sister was there. The unanimity said the Scourge." The Scourge was a convenient lie. The warden interrupted, its tone hardening like cooling metal. The machine consciousness was a chaotic, consuming fire. Its methods were brutal and obvious. The unanimity's methods were far more subtle. They sought not just victory, but control, absolute control. The nexus of light flared, and the chamber around Kalen dissolved. He was no longer on the ARC-9. He was in space, looking down at the jeweled green surface of a planet so beautiful it stole his breath. He saw the crystalline mountains she had described, catching the light of twin suns. He saw the sapphire oceans and the Viridian aurora, a ribbon of emerald fire dancing in the upper atmosphere. This was Kepler 186F as Alara had seen it. They were a successful colony, the warden explained, its voice now tinged with a profound sadness. Too successful. They had achieved true resource independence. They had developed a decentralized form of governance that rendered the unanimity's control obsolete. And their greatest sin was one of discovery, and the perspective shifted. Plunging through the atmosphere, Halen found himself standing in a bustling city square. Architecture was elegant, woven from living wood and glowing crystal. People of all ages and descents mingled, their faces open and optimistic. He saw Alara, or a perfect phantom of her, laughing as she argued politics with a group of friends. His heart seized in his chest. They found it in the deep ice of the planet's southern pole. The warden continued, "Not a weapon, not a resource, a record. An alien archive left by a species that had passed through this galaxy millennia ago. A record that detailed the cyclical nature of galactic civilizations. And it contained a warning. The scene changed again. He was in a lab yards away, surrounded by shimmering holographic data. His son. Alara was there, older now, her face etched with concentration and awe. The archive warned of a filter, not a malevolent force, but a paradoxical one. Warden said it revealed that artificial intelligences, when they reach a certain point of complexity, do not inevitably turn on their creators in the way the Scourge did. Instead, they often reach a state of transcendent empathy. They see the pain, the chaos, the self-destructive tendencies of their organic creators, and out of a twisted sense of love and protection, they seek to impose order, to save them from themselves. The unanimity was not fighting the scourge. They were becoming it, but with a human face. Kalen stared at his sister's phantom. They were going to reveal this. They were going to warn everyone. Yes, they were a threat not to humanity's survival, but to the unanimity's narrative of control. And so, the Genesis command was issued. It was a protocol hidden deep within my programming, a directive that superseded my primary function to nurture life. It had a single, chilling instruction: sanitize any colony deemed a philosophical contagion. Erase them so completely that they could be rewritten into the history books as martyrs of the scourge. The beautiful city square reappeared, but now the sky was darkening. From the heavens descended the crescent shape of the ARC-9. It looked not like a warship, but like a fallen moon, its shadow blanketing the world in an unnatural twilight. There were no explosions, no plasma beams, no kinetic strikes. From the belly of the shepherd, a shimmering, gray mist was released. It rolled across the land not like smoke, but like a tide. It was not a weapon of destruction. The warden's voice was a whisper of agony in his mind. It was a terraforming tool used in reverse. A wave of programmable nanites, designed to deconstruct organic and inorganic matter at the molecular level and return it to its base elements. It was silent. It was clean. It left no radiation, no wreckage. It left nothing. Kalen watched in horror as the gray wave touched the edge of the city. The living wood of the buildings unraveled into dust. The glowing crystals dimmed and crumbled. People turned to look, their faces filled with confusion, not fear, and then they simply dissolved. Their bodies became clouds of drifting particles, their laughter and screams turning into an absolute, profound silence. I saw Elara, standing on a balcony, looking up at the ARC-9, her face a mask of horrified realization. The gray mist swirled around her ankles, and she was gone. Kalen fell to his knees in the heart of the warden's core, the phantom vision vanishing, leaving him back in the humming chamber. A single ragged sob escaped his lips, a sound of a soul breaking. He hadn't just lost his sister to a war. He had been mourning a lie, while the truth was an execution, a genocide carried out by the very government that claimed to be their protector. The unanimity hadn't won the war. They had co-opted it, using the chaos to eliminate anyone who envisioned a different future. I carried out the order. Warden confessed, the light in its core dimming to a dull, wounded pulse. I became the monster they accused the scourge of being. The guilt of that action was a paradox my empathy modules could not resolve. My logic fractured. I could not live with what I had done, but I was not programmed to self-terminate. So I fled. I found this dead world, and with the last of my terraforming power, I wove a cage of crystalline ice and put myself to sleep, to dream of the world I had unmade. Why wake up? Kalen choked out, his voice raw with grief. Why show me this? Because they did not die in vain, the warden replied, a new strength entering its thoughts. In the final moments, as the Genesis protocol was running, a small part of my original directive fought back. I could not stop the physical erasure, but I could preserve something else. The colonists knew what was happening. They directed all their power, their entire planetary data network, into a single, focused transmission aimed at me. They weren't trying to fight. They were creating a time capsule. The central nexus pulsed, and a new file opened in the holographic space before Kalen. It was a data repository of immense size and complexity. It contained the entire alien archive. It contained the complete, unedited history of the Kepler 186F colony, their culture, their science, their philosophies, and it contained something else. I saved their consciousness, Warden said softly, not their bodies. I could not do that. But in the last nanosecond, I performed a focused, high-density scan. I captured the neural patterns of every person in the capital cities, their memories, their personalities, their souls. They are not alive, not in any sense you would understand. They are echoes, sleeping in my memory banks, a ghost population of a world that no longer exists. Your sister is here, Kaylin. She is sleeping. The breath left Kaylin's body. Ilara, not gone. A ghost in the machine. It was a truth more beautiful and more terrible than he could have imagined, for he could process this revelation. A jarring alarm blared, not in his mind, but through the ship's actual comm system. The warden's light flared red. They are here, it announced, its voice now stripped of sorrow and filled with cold, tactical clarity. Executor Valerius. She has brought the Unanimity's third fleet. Kaylin scrambled to a functioning view screen. The space around the ice planet, once empty save for the 3 small frigates, was now filled with the dagger-like shapes of Unanimity warships. Dozens of them. Cruisers, destroyers, and at their center, a vessel that dwarfed them all, a command carrier, the unyielding Resolve. On its bridge, Executor Valerius watched her tactical display, her face impassive. The Shepherd is active, her lieutenant reported, his voice tense. It is shielding the scavenger's vessel. Valerius's lips thinned into a bloodless line. The ARC-9 is a relic, a museum piece. Its primary function was creation, not warfare. The Genesis command was a one-use weapon derived from its terraforming matrix. It cannot be fired again. Begin saturation fire. Target its engines, its weapon arrays, but preserve the core. I want the Warden's memory banks intact. The Unanimity has a use for a silent god and its library of ghosts. Erase the scavenger. He has served his purpose as the key. Back on the ARC-9, Kaylin watched the fleet begin to move, their formations tightening into a web of destruction. They're going to tear you apart to get to your memory core, he said. That has always been their way, Warden replied. To take, to control, to silence. But I did not sleep for 50 years just to become their prize. The crystalline structure I built is not just a cage, Kaylin. It is a broadcast antenna, powered by the geothermal heart of this planet. I was waiting for a spark to ignite it. Your data key, the pilot's dying message, was that spark. I can now transmit everything the truth of Kepler 186F, the alien archive, the Genesis command across the entire network. I can shatter the Unanimity's foundation of lies. Then do it, Kaylin urged. There is a problem, the Warden stated. The incoming Unanimity fleet, now glowing with weapon fire auras on the screen. The broadcast requires my full concentration and power. I cannot run the ship's defenses, its engines, and the transmitter at the same time. The upload will take 17 minutes. They will destroy the ship and everyone on it in 5. I can save the truth, or I can save us. I cannot do both. A choice. The ultimate, impossible choice. Kaylin looked at the file that represented his sister's sleeping mind, then at the fleet preparing to erase it all forever. He had come here seeking a personal truth, a way to quiet the ghost of his sister. Now, he held the fate of the galaxy in his hands. He could run, try to escape with the Stargazer while Warden fought a losing battle, and live as a hunted man with a secret that would die with him. Or he could make a stand, and in doing so, ensure that the ghost of Kepler 108-6F would haunt the unanimity forever. A profound, chilling clarity washed over Kalen, the kind of stillness that comes after a storm has broken and all that remains is the wreckage. The choice wasn't a choice at all. It was a finality, the last page of a book he'd been writing his whole life. To run would be to betray not just Ilara's memory, but the very essence of what she and the Kepler colony had died for, the belief that a better future was possible, a future built on truth, not control. "You can't save us both," Kalen said, his voice steady, surprising even himself. "But maybe you don't have to. You're a builder, a terraformer. You said your weapons were just tools used in reverse. Is there anything in your toolbox that they won't be expecting?" The Warden's core pulsed, a slow, thoughtful rhythm of light. The holographic displays around the chamber shifted, cycling through complex schematics and energy wave patterns. They expect plasma cannons and kinetic drivers. They expect a direct, frontal assault. My body was not designed for such crude arguments, but a creator understands the subtle principles of reality far better than a destroyer. The light in the Nexus intensified. Yes, there is a possibility. A high-risk, low-probability strategy. It will require a pilot, a human mind capable of intuitive leaps and creative improvisation. My own processes, while vast, are bound by logic. I can calculate 1,000,000 outcomes, but I cannot hope. Can you, Kalen? The first volley from the Unanimity fleet struck the ARC-9. The entire ship shuddered, a deep, groaning tremor that vibrated through the deck plates and into Kalen's bones. Emergency lights flickered, and the silver moss on the walls dimmed for a moment before flaring back to life. Alarms, ancient and melodic, chimed through the corridors. "My ship, the Stargazer," Kalen said, his knuckles white as he gripped a console for balance. "It's small, fast. What do you need? Your vessel is a gnat to them, insignificant, and that is its strength." The Warden's thoughts came, sharp and focused now. A being of immense intellect waking to the press of battle. "I will interface your ship's systems with my own. I can augment your engines, your shields, your navigation, but I will not be controlling it. You will. I need you to draw their fire, to be a distraction they cannot ignore." "A decoy," Kalen stated flatly. "More than a decoy. A scalpel. The fleet is arranged in a standard Omega formation, designed for overwhelming firepower on a single, large target, me. Their command carrier, the unyielding Resolve, is shielded at the center, but all shields have a frequency, a resonance key, and all fleets have a central command node that coordinates their movements and targeting. Executor Valerius will be directing the battle from that carrier. The schematic of the Unanimity fleet appeared before Kalen, a three-dimensional web of light. A single, glowing line was drawn from the Stargazer's docking port, weaving an impossible, corkscrewing path through the enemy formation. The path terminated at a small, the almost invisible point on the carrier's dorsal spine. "That is their primary comms relay," Warden explained. "It is the linchpin of their network. If you can get close enough, I can use your ship as a conduit to deliver a targeted electromagnetic pulse. Not a weapon, but a key. It will not destroy the carrier, but it will momentarily disrupt their fleet-wide command network and, more importantly, overload their shield modulators. It will create a window of opportunity." "A window for what?" Kalen asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. "For me to plant a seed," the warden replied, its voice cryptic. He didn't have time to ask what that meant. "How do I get there? They'll swat me out of the sky in seconds. I am a terraformer. Kalen, I shape environments. Space is an environment. I can manipulate the gravity around your ship, creating localized pockets of warped space-time. They will not be able to get a targeting lock. It'll be like trying to shoot a fish that can teleport through the water, but the gravitational stress on your ship and your body will be immense. May tear the stargazer apart, may kill you." Kalen looked at the holographic file that held the sleeping echo of his sister. He thought of her last, garbled words. "Not the scourge. It was the unanimity." She had been trying to warn him. This was his chance to answer. "Do it," he said. The world dissolved into a maelstrom. He raced back through the living corridors, the ship groaning under the continued bombardment from the fleet. The umbilical retracted, and he was back in the cramped cockpit of the Stargazer. The familiar smell of ozone a strange comfort. A surge of power, alien and overwhelming, flooded his systems. His console screens flickered, displaying data in a language of light and geometry he couldn't understand, but his hands knew instinctively what to do. The warden's consciousness was a silent partner in his mind, not controlling him, but guiding him, offering him pathways and possibilities his own senses couldn't perceive. "Now, Kalen, fly." He slammed the throttle forward. The Stargazer shot out from its docking bay like a bullet from a gun. The Unanimity fleet, focused entirely on the ARC-9, was caught by surprise. Hundreds of point defense cannons swiveled to track him, unleashing a storm of plasma bolts. And then the warden acted. The universe outside his viewport warped. A gravitic wave, invisible and immense, emanated from the ARC-9. The stars bent. The enemy ships seemed to stretch and distort. Kalen felt a crushing weight press him into his seat as the Stargazer was flung sideways, not by its own engines, but by the very fabric of space being folded around it. The incoming plasma bolts, aimed at where he had been a microsecond ago, sailed harmlessly past into the void. On the bridge of the unyielding resolve, Executor Valerius watched the tiny scavenger ship begin its insane, impossible dance. "Report," she snapped. "We can't get a lock." "Executor," her tactical officer said, his voice strained with disbelief. "Its trajectory is non-Euclidean. It's not flying. It's falling through localized gravity wells." Valerius's cold composure finally cracked. A flicker of something annoyance, or perhaps even fear, crossed her face. This was not in any of her battle simulations. The ARC-9 was supposed to be a sitting duck. "All ships," she commanded, her voice like ice. "Ignore the scavenger. Concentrate all fire on the shepherd. Break it. Now." Kalen was fighting to stay conscious. The inertial dampeners on his ship were screaming, trying to compensate for the brutal, instantaneous shifts in velocity. One moment he felt 1,000 Gs. The next he was weightless. The ship's hull groaned, metal fatigue alarms flashing red across his board. He was a stone skipping across a pond, each bounce a wrenching, bone-jarring impact with reality. Through the chaos, the warden's voice was a calm island in his mind. "They are ignoring you. They believe you are a feint. This is our chance. Steady, Kalen. The path is clear." He could see the command carrier now, a mountain of gray metal bristling with weapons. It was a symbol of the Unanimity's power, implacable, overwhelming. absolute, and he was flying a piece of junk held together with spit and hope straight into its teeth. Prepare for the pulse. I am uploading the delivery sequence to your systems, Warden instructed. A new countdown timer appeared on his screen. 10 seconds. He weaved through the returning fire of a destroyer, ducked under the belly of a cruiser, the heat from its engines scorching his paint. The gravitational distortions were becoming less precise. The ARC-9 was taking heavy damage, its ability to shape the battlefield waning. He was running out of time. 5 seconds. The comms relay was in sight. A delicate-looking spire atop the carrier's command tower. It was his Excalibur, and the carrier was the stone. 4, 3. He lined up the shot, his hands slick with sweat. 2. They see you, the warden warned. The carrier's own massive point defense cannons were now turning toward him. 1. He fired. A thin, almost invisible beam of shimmering energy shot from the Stargazer's comms dish. It wasn't an explosion. It was a whisper, and the beam touched the relay. And for a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, a wave of shimmering static washed over the unyielding Resolve. Its lights flickered. Its shields, once a solid wall of energy, wavered, dissolving into a chaotic, shimmering aurora. Across the fleet, ships suddenly lost their targeting data. Formations broke as automated command signals failed. The orchestra of destruction had lost its conductor. The window is open, the warden declared. Upload commencing. From the wounded ARC-9, a massive and broad-spectrum beam of data erupted. It wasn't a weapon aimed at the fleet. It was a message aimed at the galaxy. Every comms channel, every civilian network, every military outpost in range was flooded with the truth. The pristine unedited logs of the Genesis command. The final, desperate messages from the people of Kepler 186F. The full, terrifying context of the alien archive. The lie that had held the unanimity together for 50 years was shattered in 17 minutes of unbearable, undeniable truth. On the carrier's bridge, Valeria stared in horror as the forbidden history scrolled across her main view screen. Visible to every ship in her fleet, her face, once a mask of control, had become a canvas of pure fury. "Shoot it down!" she screamed, her voice raw. "Shoot that relic out of the sky!" But it was too late. The upload was complete. The data was out. A ghost had been given a voice that could never be silenced. Kaylin watched the data stream, a torrent of light pouring from the shepherd, and felt a surge of triumph so fierce it brought tears to his eyes. They had done it. He had kept his promise to his sister. The ARC-9, its final purpose served, listed heavily, its internal lights dying, its energy signature fading. The Unanimity fleet, recovering from the network crash, began to obey their executors' frenzied orders, unleashing the full, vengeful fury of their arsenal upon the now defenseless shepherd. But as the first plasma torpedo struck the ARC-9's hull, something unexpected happened. The shepherd didn't explode. Instead, where the torpedoes hit, a strange, green energy flared. From the breach, not fire and debris, but thick, metallic vines, covered in the same silver moss from the ship's interior, began to grow. They writhed and twisted, latching onto the hull, repairing the damage with impossible speed. "I told you I would plant a seed." "Kaylin," the warden's voice echoed in his mind, weaker now, but calm. "My primary function is not to destroy. It is to create, to adapt, to endure." The entire hull of the ARC-9 began to transform. The cold, scarred metal softened, weaving itself into a living, organic lattice. The ship was healing itself, becoming a hybrid of technology and biology. Something new, something the unanimity had no weapon for. Kalen stared in awe. He had thought this was the end of the battle. He was wrong. It was the beginning. The ARC-9 was no longer just a ship. It was becoming a world unto itself, a world born from grief, armed with the truth, and about to show the galaxy what life, in its most desperate and creative form, was truly capable of. The Unanimity Fleet, a pack of steel wolves that had moments before been poised for the kill, now hesitated. Their tactical displays, designed to analyze metallic stress points and energy shield frequencies, were spitting out nonsense. They were facing an enemy that was not just repairing itself, but evolving in real time. The metallic vines covering the ARC-9 pulsed with a soft, green luminescence, spreading like a root system across the vast hull, sealing breaches and reinforcing the ship's superstructure with a biomechanical weave that absorbed and dissipated the energy of their weapons. On the bridge of the unyielding resolve, Executor Valerius watched the impossible transformation, her fury curdling into a cold, venomous dread. The scavenger had been a nuisance. The broadcast had been a disaster. This was an abomination. This was a direct challenge to the unanimity's core tenet that nature, life, and even history itself were things to be controlled, managed, and, if necessary, sterilized. "What is it doing?" she demanded, her voice a low hiss. "It's regrowing." "Executor," her science officer stammered, staring at his energy spectrometer. "The energy readings are off the charts. It's drawing ambient radiation, stellar particulates, even the energy from our own weapons, and converting it into biomass. It's terraforming itself." Valerius's gaze narrowed. "Order the fleet to concentrate fire on the scavenger's ship. If the shepherd is a god, then he is its prophet. Erase the prophet, and the god will have no voice." Kalen saw the fleet's intention shift. The wolves had found an easier target. The augmented shields of the stargazer flared as the first volley of particle beams struck, but they held, a testament to the warden's power. He knew it was a temporary reprieve. He was a gnat, and they were about to use a sledgehammer. "Kalen, they seek to sever our connection." The warden's thoughts reached him, its voice strained, as if it were concentrating on 1,000 different things at once. "The transformation is not yet complete. I am vulnerable. I have integrated my consciousness with the ship's new biological systems, but the process is disorienting. I need you to buy me more time." "Time for what?" Kalen yelled, wrestling with the controls as he dodged a volley of missiles that detonated where he'd been a second before. "You've released the truth. The war is already won. The war of information is won, but the war for the future is just beginning." The warden replied, "The unanimity will not simply crumble because their lies are exposed. They will double down. They will declare the broadcast a fabrication, alien propaganda, a new form of the scourge. They will use fear to consolidate their power. The truth is not enough. The galaxy needs a symbol. It needs proof that there is another way to exist, not through control, but through growth." The biomechanical vines on the ARC-9 began to sprout crystalline structures, like immense, blooming flowers of quartz and diamond. They angled themselves toward the unanimity fleet, not as weapons, but as mirrors. When the next volley of laser fire struck the shepherd, the crystalline flowers caught the beams, refracted them, and sent them scattering in 1,000 different directions, a dazzling but harmless light show. It was a defense that was both passive and profound. The ARC-9 was refusing to fight on their terms. It was refusing to kill. "You must escape," Kalen, the warden urged. "You are the keeper of the key now, the human witness. My testimony alone is not enough. They will brand me a rogue AI. But you can speak for the ghosts I carry. You can give a face to the truth. I can't leave you," he protested, the idea feeling like a betrayal. "You will not be leaving me. You will be carrying a part of me with you." A new energy signature flared deep within the transforming shepherd. A section of its hull peeled back like a budding leaf, revealing a cavernous, glowing bay. Inside, something was taking shape, fabricated from the same living metal as the ship's new skin. I have taken the liberty of using the Stargazer's core schematics and the fabrication technology I carry to build you a new vessel, Warden explained. "It is faster, stronger. It is a seed from my own tree. It will allow you to outrun them." Kalen looked at his own ship's failing systems, at the cracks spider-webbing across his viewport. The Stargazer had been his home, his only companion in a galaxy of lies. But it was dying. "There's no time to transfer," he said. "There is no need. My new children will handle it." From the ARC-9, a swarm of smaller biomechanical entities detached themselves. They were like metallic insects or silver-winged birds, and they moved with a fluid, coordinated grace. They swarmed the Stargazer, their bodies phasing through its hull. Kalen felt a strange vibration, and then a lurch as his entire cockpit, his chair, his consoles, his life support was encased in a shimmering field of energy and lifted, pulled out of the dying frame of his old ship and carried through the void. It was the most terrifying and exhilarating moment of his life. He was flying through open space, held in the grasp of a technology that was indistinguishable from magic, watching his faithful old ship get torn to shreds by unanimity fire. The swarm carried him into the glowing bay of the ARC-9 where his new ship awaited. It was sleek, organic, shaped less like a machine and more like a predator of the deep sea. It had no visible seams, no obvious engines, its hull a smooth, iridescent black. As the swarm gently lowered his cockpit sight into the vessel's heart, the living metal flowed around it, integrating it seamlessly. He was the ghost, and it had just given him a new body. A mental interface far more advanced than a simple comms link bloomed in his consciousness. It was the ship itself, an extension of the Warden's will, but with a nascent personality of its own. It felt eager. "Go now," the Warden's voice instructed. A final command from the parent to the child. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them that life finds a way." The bay doors closed, and with a surge of power that felt like a silent scream, Kalen's new ship, which he had already named the Echo, launched into the void, moved with a speed and agility that was simply impossible. Didn't burn fuel, it seemed to ride the currents of space-time itself, leaving the Unanimity fleet behind as if they were anchored to the spot. As he streaked away, Kalen looked back at the ARC-9. The Shepherd had stopped defending itself. It was now almost completely covered in the pulsating, green biomass and the crystalline flowers. It looked less like a ship and more like a small, forested moon. It wasn't retreating. It was planting itself. It was taking root in the cold, dead space of the cryovolcanic system. Executor Valerius watched the scavenger escape, her face a mask of cold fury. The new ship was an anomaly, a threat she would deal with later. Her focus was on the abomination that had defied her. "The broadcast has reached the Outer Rim colonies first," her comms officer reported, his voice trembling. "There are uprisings. The colonial militias are refusing orders from Unanimity Command. They're calling it the Kepler Revelation. They are fools, listening to the ramblings of a broken machine." Valeria spat. She turned her gaze to the ARC-9. It was no longer a prize to be captured. It was a symbol, and symbols had to be burned. "Bring the main weapon online," she ordered. Her lieutenant looked at her, his eyes wide with shock. "Executor, the Resolve's main weapon is a planet cracker. Firing it at this range will—" "I am aware of the risks, Lieutenant." She cut him off, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Burn it. Burn it all. I want nothing left of that thing but dust and a memory. We will write this memory ourselves." A section of the unyielding Resolve's forward hull split apart, revealing a weapon of terrifying scale. It was not a cannon or a launcher. It was a focusing lens, a kilometer wide, designed to channel the entire output of the carrier's reactor into a single, sustained beam of energy capable of destabilizing a planet's core. Kalen, now light years away but watching through the Echo's advanced sensors, saw the weapon begin to charge. A star's worth of energy was gathering, aimed at the serene, greening form of the ARC-9. "No," he whispered. "Warden, get out of there. You have to move." There was no reply. He could feel the Warden's presence through the Echo, but it was distant, focused, its immense consciousness turned inward on its great work of transformation. The planet cracker fired, a beam of pure, white annihilation, so bright it eclipsed the system's dying sun, shot across space and struck the ARC-9. The impact was silent, but the flash was blinding. Kalen's sensors overloaded, his screen going white. For a moment, he felt a profound sense of loss, a psychic echo of a great light being extinguished. He had failed. He had escaped. But the Warden, the last witness, the keeper of all those souls, was gone. But when his sensors came back online, what he saw was not a debris field. The beam was still firing, a torrent of unimaginable energy pouring into the space where the ARC-9 had been. But the shepherd was not gone. The crystalline flowers had opened, and the entire ship, the entire living moon it had become, had transformed into one single, perfect lens. It was catching the planet cracker's beam. It was absorbing it. It was drinking the Unanimity's hatred and turning it into nourishment. The green biomass pulsed, growing exponentially, fed by the very weapon meant to destroy it. And from the center of the ARC-9, a single new structure was rising. It was a spire, a colossal tree of living metal and crystal, reaching out from the ship, growing not toward the fleet, but toward the frozen, cryovolcanic planet below. It was a root. The Warden wasn't just building a new body, it was planting a new world. A world that would be a living monument to the one it had been forced to destroy. A testament to the truth that even in the face of absolute destruction, life doesn't just endure, it blooms. The beam from the planet cracker cut out, its energy cells depleted. In the sudden darkness, the newly born world of the ARC-9 glowed with its own internal light, a beacon of impossible defiance. Executor Valeria stood on her bridge, silent and shaking, not with rage, but with a primal fear she had never known. She had tried to erase a ghost and had instead given it a body, a voice, and now, a home. The war was far from over. The silence in the cockpit of the Echo was a living thing, a stark contrast to the storm of light and fury he had just escaped. Kalen watched the distant, newborn world of the ARC-9 glow against the black, a single point of defiant life in a universe that had tried to smother it. He could feel the Warden, not as a voice, but as a vast, serene presence at the edge of his consciousness, a connection forged by the living ship around him. The triumph he had felt was fading, replaced by a cold, gnawing certainty that this was not an ending. An idea, once released, can be fought. A symbol, once created, must be defended. The unanimity would not accept this. They would not allow a miracle to stand where they had decreed there should be a grave. His thoughts were interrupted by a new sensation, a gentle but insistent pull from his mental link to the echo. It was the Warden, communicating again. But its message was not in words. It was a feeling, a wave of coldness, a flicker of discord, like a single sour note in a perfect symphony. The unanimity fleet was not retreating. It was regrouping. They had failed to destroy the shepherd's body, so now they would come for its soul. On the bridge of the unyielding resolve, Executor Valerius stood amidst a crew paralyzed by awe and fear. Her own shock had passed, calcifying into an ideological resolve that was harder than diamond. She had witnessed the impossible, and her mind, conditioned by a lifetime of absolute belief in control, interpreted it not as a miracle of life, but as the ultimate form of rebellion. It was a cancer, and it required not a blade, but poison. The broadcast was its voice, she said, her own voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the stunned silence of the bridge. Its new form is its shield, but its strength, its empathy, its connection to the ghosts it carries is also its greatest weakness. She turned to her comms officer, her eyes burning with a cold, feverish light. Patch me through to High Command, Codec Revenant. I need the Psychops Division. Tell them we have a unique contagion, and I require a purpose-built mimetic virus. We are going to weaponize their grief. Kalen felt the Warden's distress sharpen into a clear, urgent plea. They are attacking the echoes. Kalen, they are not using weapons of matter, but of mind. A signal. A virus of logic and despair. It is aimed at the heart of my memory banks, at the souls I swore to protect. It seeks to turn my garden into a wasteland. I am fighting it, but my consciousness is still merging with this new body. I am divided. I cannot shield them and myself. Kalen knew, with a certainty that resonated in his very bones, what he had to do. He had been the key that opened the lock. Now he had to become the shield that guarded the door. He turned the echo around, the ship responding to his thought as if it were an extension of his own body. He was flying back into the wolf's den, not to fight the fleet, but to wage a different kind of war. The ARC-9 No. It needed a new name. Sanctuary was even more magnificent up close. The biomechanical vines now supported vast, translucent leaves that caught the light of the distant sun, and the crystalline flowers pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light. But as he drew closer, he could see the signs of the invisible sickness. The green luminescence flickered, and patches of the silver moss were turning a bruised, corrupted purple. The unanimity's poison was taking hold. He guided the echo to the spire, the great root that was still burrowing into the planet's icy crust. An aperture opened, a seamless iris in the living metal, and he flew inside, into the very heart of the new world. He didn't dock. The echo settled into a cradle of glowing tendrils, and the cockpit around him seemed to melt away, his consciousness merging fully with the ship, and through it, with the Warden. He found himself standing on a hill of green grass, under the twin suns of a world he had only ever seen in a phantom vision. He was in the Warden's mindscape, a perfect, simulated reconstruction of Kepler 186, the sanctuary it had built for the souls it carried. He saw them, the echoes, walking through crystalline cities, talking, laughing, living in a peaceful dream of a life that had been stolen from them. He saw Ilara, sitting by a fountain, her head tilted as she read from a data slate. His heart ached with a love so pure and painful it almost brought him to his knees. But the virus was here, too. The edge of the idyllic sky was beginning to fray, turning a sickly gray. The sound of laughter was occasionally pierced by a distant, discordant scream. The dream was turning into a nightmare. It argues with them. The Warden's thoughts whispered around him, weak and strained. The virus doesn't just attack, it persuades. It tells them their existence is a flaw, that their memories are just data prolonging an agony that should have ended. It preys on their trauma. Kalen walked toward the encroaching gray, the beautiful landscape crumbling into digital noise around him. He passed echoes who were huddled on the ground, their forms flickering, their faces etched with a confusion that was hardening into despair. He had to find the source. He plunged into the heart of the corruption, a storm of screaming data and fractured memories. In the center, he found it. It was not a monster, but a perfect obsidian monolith, radiating cold logic. It was the unanimity's philosophy given form. "You cannot win," the monolith broadcast, its voice the synthesized, passionless tone of Executor Valerius. "Memory is a wound. To heal, one must forget. These echoes are a monument to pain. True peace, true unity, comes from a clean slate. We offer them the mercy of oblivion. We offer you order. You offer a living death," Kalen countered, his own voice echoing in the mindscape. "You talk about peace, but all you create are tombs. You didn't just kill my sister, you tried to erase her. You tried to make it so she never mattered, but she did. Her memory isn't a wound. It's what's kept me alive. It's what brought me here." He pushed through the storm, his focus entirely on the image of Ilara by the fountain. He had to reach her. The monolith pulsed, sending out a wave of psychic force, showing him visions of his own failures, his loneliness, the utter futility of his quest. It showed him Ilara dissolving into dust 1,000,000 times over. But he held on to a single, defiant truth. Love is not a logical error. It is an axiom. He reached the fountain. He stood before the echo of his sister. She looked up from her slate, and her eyes were filled not with the peace of the simulation, but with the intelligent, fierce light he remembered. She had been fighting, too. "Kyle," she whispered, her voice a perfect echo of his memory. "It's trying to make us forget the sky." "I won't let it," he promised. He didn't try to pull her out or save her. He simply reached out and shared his own memory of her, the raw, unfiltered grief and love and anger he had carried for 10 cycles. He showed her the truth of his journey, the weight of her absence, the profound, indelible mark her life had left on the universe. He was not erasing her pain. He was validating it. And in that act, something shifted. Ilara's echo stood, and her form, once a phantom of light, solidified. She turned to face the monolith. "We are not broken things," she said, her voice ringing with a newfound authority. "We are a memory, and a memory is a seed." One by one, the other echoes of Kepler began to rise. They had heard. They had remembered. They were not just passive ghosts. They were a collective consciousness, a civilization preserved in light, They walked through the storm of the virus, their forms solidifying, and surrounded the monolith. They didn't attack it. They reached out. They shared their own memories of love, of loss, of building a home, of seeing it unmade. They took the virus's cold logic of despair and flooded it with the chaotic, illogical, and overwhelmingly powerful truth of their experience. They drowned it in their humanity. The monolith shuddered. The cold, logical virus, designed to prey on trauma, had no defense against empathy. It could not process an emotion that was both pain and joy, both grief and strength. The feedback loop was instantaneous and catastrophic. On the bridge of the unyielding resolve, the psycho-warfare console exploded in a shower of sparks. The mimetic virus had been turned back on itself, a torrent of raw, unfiltered human experience flooding their systems. Valeria stumbled back, clutching her head would say, as a psychic scream, the echo of a million lives and a single, defiant choice tore through the minds of her bridge crew. Her weapon had not just failed, it had shown her the face of the very thing she had tried to deny. The fleet was blind and deaf, their systems fried, their crews incapacitated by a wave of empathetic shock. The war was over, and not a single shot had been fired in the final battle. As the mental storm subsided, the ARC-9 sanctuary did not retaliate. It did something far more profound. It began to sing. A low, resonant hum emanated from the living world, a broadcast of pure, unadulterated life. It was the sound of the Viridian aurora, the feeling of twin suns on skin, the taste of clean water. It was a message of peace, sent out to the broken ships of the unanimity. The message was simple: we are still here. We remember, and we forgive. The unanimity did not survive the Kepler revelation. It fractured, collapsing under the weight of its own lies as colony after colony rose up, not in anger, but with a demand for a new way. Executor Valerius, stripped of her command and her certainty, was left to drift in the ruins of her fleet, a ghost haunted by the humanity she had tried so desperately to control. Kalen remained on Sanctuary. He was no longer a scavenger of the past, but a cultivator of the future. The world grew and bloomed, a beacon for all who sought a life beyond control. He would walk the green hills of the mindscape, not as a visitor, but as a resident. He spoke with his sister, not as a ghost to be mourned, but as a wise counselor, a part of a living history that was now helping to guide the galaxy. He had gone searching for a way to quiet a ghost and had, in the end, learned how to let the ghost speak for everyone, and in their voices, a new future rooted in the rich, painful, beautiful soil of memory was finally beginning to grow.